Welcome to Theatre 9 for, what day are we on? Fourth day of Ignite? I've lost count, as my voice appears to have lost the ability to do a lot of speaking as well. Thank you for coming over to this presentation. We're going to be looking at Windows Defender ATP. The aim of the 20 minutes is to show you how easy it is to onboard your computers, your servers, into Microsoft Defender ATP. It used to be called Windows Defender ATP. In fact, it's so used to be called Windows Defender ATP that I appear to have typed that up there. It takes a long time for my brain to catch up with the new names of things. I thought my slide was great, and just as I spoke through it, I realized I'd even called the product the wrong thing on its current name. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the wizard to show you how easy it is to set this up. You know, in my company, we booked some time to do this. We set ourselves a couple of hours aside. We came on, we ran it, and 15 minutes later, we're like, oh, we're done. What are we going to do with the rest of our time? And it was off the back of that very quick introduction we had to it that I thought I'd do this presentation. Okay. So there's a few steps later on that take a bit more time, and while we're going through those, that's when I'll talk some more about what I've done. Okay. So it's easy enough. There's a localization setting up there where you can pick, clearly you would pick GB, because that's the language that all things should be displayed in. But for the benefit of the Americans in the audience, I'll leave it as US. We click Next. And this is like a one-time setup. So I'm very thankful to Heinke and to John for providing me free licenses so I can do this and demo this, because getting these licenses is like gold dust. Okay. So in terms of the setup, you choose the region where you would like your data to be stored. So we'll pick US for this one. You choose how many days you'd want to store the data for. So I'm going to leave it 180 days. So I can go back in the logs in 6 months' time. I can go back 6 months and view the data. Okay. For Microsoft's deployment benefit, they want to know how big your organization is. So we'll leave that. And then there's some preview features. And I can say, yes, I'd like to have them turned on. So we'll just click Next. And it says, this is going to be done. You can't go back. Are you sure? So yes, we're certain. Okay, and that'll take about a minute to do it. Okay, and it really is that easy to set it up. The thing we're going to do next is then take our machines and onboard them into the service. Now that doesn't take so long. If I manage to onboard some machines in the next 15 minutes, that'll be brilliant. What I'm expecting from the demo is I'll show you how to onboard the different types of machines. Whether I actually get to see them in the portal in 15 minutes, that's a different thing. Okay. But we've chosen our region. We've chosen our duration. Okay. In terms of licensing, you need Microsoft E5 licenses, Microsoft 365 E5 licenses. That includes Windows E5 license. That's built into this. Okay. There is an MD-ATP standalone license that you can get. And if you're licensing servers, you license them through the Azure Security Center. So you buy Azure Security Center standard licenses, and then you can put your servers into this as well. Okay? Because the server license, it's a server, so you don't need to buy a Windows 10 license to license your servers. Okay, there we go. It's done. And it says, right, what's the first thing I want to do? Now, I can onboard my machines in a number of different ways. The first thing I've got in terms of onboarding is a local script, and it tells me at the top, under number 1, the first machine onboard process is incomplete. So I can download a package. It's actually a command file. So let's download that. Good, my internet's not too slow. Copy that, and I'm just going to pop over to my virtual machine that I've got running. Paste that into there. It's a zip. Okay, I'm just going to unblock it. I don't need to do that. So I'm just going to extract it. It's on the desktop. Okay, so it's just a script. Now I need to run this script as admin. So I've got an admin command prompt open. So desktop, go into the folder that I've just created, and run the onboarding script. Okay, and so it says, let's just zoom in on that to make it a little bit easier. Oh, that's now massive, but there we go. The script will onboard your machine into, it still says Windows Defender ATP in the script, okay, and it says it should turn up within 5 to 30 minutes. We're hoping, obviously, for 5 in this case. It'll depend on whether it's plugged in or battery. You know, if it's on battery, it might do things a little bit slower and so on. But don't use this script for a large-scale deployment. So this is just the I'm testing. Okay? So for example, if you had some firewall connectivity questions, you might want to take one machine, run this script on it, check your firewall logs, resolve your firewall problems. By the way, it runs a system account. So if you don't allow anonymous browsing through your proxies, then it's not going to work. Okay? So you need to allow system account access through your proxies. I'm just going to say yes. Actually, I've got to zoom out to that. So yes. Okay? And it does a bunch of checks. So for example, it's checking that I'm an admin, that I've got the rights to do this. Okay? I had with a customer here, some of the testing, the current antivirus product on the machine at a customer didn't like this because it was doing things as system account. Okay? So you might find that if you're moving from one AV to Defender, you might have some problems with running this as well. Again, this is all for the test. It generates lots of logs. You can use it to prove that it's working and stuff like that. Okay, so I wouldn't expect you to run this command prompt, let's say via GPO in a startup script. That's not what this is for. This is just for my initial onboard. So it tells me, waiting for service start, fully onboarded, it says. So I press enter. Let's clear that screen for a moment. I'm going to go SC query sense. Now sense, so zoom in on that for you. Sense is the sensor. The sensor is based on Windows telemetry services, and it sends what's happening on the machine up to the Defender Cloud. And it's in the Defender Cloud that it uses the analysis of what your machine is doing to tell you about the threats on your machine. Okay? And there's lots of other stuff they use for doing that. So if I run that, if I look at the state of the Sense service, zoom in again on that, we can see it's running. The service is not stoppable. We'll come back to that later. This is basically an antivirus service if you want. You know, you wouldn't want to pick up some malware that was able to stop the sensor and then do its nefarious work because you wouldn't be reported on it. Okay? Indeed, and we'll see this in a bit maybe, that if I try and stop the sensor, that's considered a malicious action on the machine and will be alerted. Okay, so that's my test machine. Let's pop back to my onboarding. Okay, and it says, okay, now that I've onboarded the machine, here's some script, and I'm just going to run it, and then I'll come back and show you what it does. Okay, disappeared. Okay. What that script did was it ran PowerShell in a hidden window, and it moved some files around and downloaded them from a web address. It doesn't actually do anything, okay? But when that information is uploaded to the Defender Threat Service, the Microsoft Defender ATP service sees that and says, you're onboarded, and I successfully detected you. Okay? So it'll raise that as an informational level alert. And when it sees that alert coming from one machine, in the web portal, it will tell me that onboarding is complete. Okay? So I can come back into this and see this later. Okay? So I'll say start using for now. It says it's not ready yet, but I know it is, so I'll say proceed anyway. And that will take me into the portal. Okay. I can have a look at the machines in the portal, and if everything's working well, I should have one machine. I do. There we go. So my one machine has been onboarded. Okay. At the moment, in terms of risk level, there's no known risks. That will go informational shortly when it picks up the fact that let's call it an ICAR type test script has run. Okay, so it's a benign process that this uses to say, yes, I can see the machine. Okay. So I've got one machine in there. Under Settings, which is the bottom option in the window, I've got the ability to, let's go to Onboarding, I've got the ability to onboard other machines. This is in effect back to the page I had at the end of the setup service. But now it tells me my first machine is completed onboarding, and in fact, it's now detected that first machine has run the detection test. Okay? I could take that script and run it on other machines if I so wanted. Okay? But for a 20-minute demo, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to look at onboarding other machines. Okay? First one I'm going to do, I'm going to onboard in Intune. So let's pop over to Intune. And we can see in Intune, I've got 3 machines running. They're all domain joined, hybrid AD joined, not that that matters. But if you're on my session yesterday, that's how I got these machines into Intune. Okay? They're all currently compliant. I've got no Intune rules, and I've got a setting that just says, if you're in Intune, you're compliant. And we'll come back to that. Okay, so I've got some machines in Intune. And what I can do is I can go into, let's go back to Intune. It's got the wrong, there we go. So I can go to Intune, I can go to device compliance, and I can go to Microsoft Defender ATP in the device compliance area. Okay? And what it'll tell me here is it's currently not connected to Microsoft Defender ATP. Okay? So if I pop back to onboarding and advanced features, then I can find the option that allows me to onboard Intune. So I scroll down, I'll find it, there we go. There's the Intune connector. So I can turn on the Intune connector, click Save Preferences, and that's all my Intune machines now onboarded into Defender ATP. Okay? It really is one-click deployment for my Intune machines. Okay? Sorry, Microsoft Endpoint, whatever they've called it this week. Okay? Endpoint protection, isn't it? Okay? So let's pop back to here. Hit refresh. This is the Intune portal again. And I hit refresh, and it tells me the connector is available. Okay? And so I just say, okay, I'd like to connect my devices, yes. App Sync for iOS devices, that's fairly new. That's turned up in about the last month. This allows me, if I have a third-party iOS threat defense service, to report into Microsoft Threat Defense, Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection. Lookout, who are over on the show floor, are a vendor that does that, for example. Okay? And I could say block unsupported versions. It's Windows 10 1607 and later, for example. So if there's older versions of Windows 10 in Intune, it would stop. It wouldn't deploy the agent to them because it doesn't support them. Okay. So let me. And there's a little bug in this. I can click all that. It doesn't give me save at the top because what I actually need to do is go out. Let's go away. Go back. Because I've first set this up, and now I get the save icon. So I'll just go and do those two things I was talking about. Click Save. It'll probably throw an error at the top. Again, I always see that. Okay. But again, if I go out and back, it tells me that it's working. There we go. So I now have an enabled connector. So a couple of things to learn from that. Okay, don't worry about the error. If you don't see the Save button, click out, click back. Okay. But I now have my Intune machines managed. Okay. If I scroll down, let's find the right scroll bar, there we go. There are 3 machines, and currently they haven't actually yet got the sensor on them. Okay. Intune will deploy updates every 8 hours by default. Okay. So what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to pop over to one of my Intune machines, PC1 will do. Okay. And in Access to School or Work dialog box, I see Info, because I'm managed by Intune. And when I click this, I can click, there we go, I can click Sync, and I can force a download of the latest settings from Intune. Okay? So again, you wouldn't do this normally. Let's go into a couple of other my machines. I wouldn't do this normally. I would just let Intune update and the machines to get their settings. But for the purposes of a more interesting demo, I would like some machines to onboard. So let's do that. Okay. And so they'll get the sensor will turn on, they'll get configured. Okay. Right, let's go back to Defender, onboarding, and let's have a look at how I might onboard some other machines. Let's have a look at Windows 7, for example. So I want to onboard Windows 7 machines. Well, I need to turn on client machine monitoring. Well, that's on by default because I didn't actually do that. Okay? And then it gives me 2 values, a workspace ID and a workspace key. So let's copy the workspace ID. I'm just going to pop over to my Windows 7 machine. And on my Windows 7 machine, I'm going to run an installer. Let's copy that and paste that in there. Okay. I'm going to run an installer called the Microsoft Monitoring Agent. So I've downloaded the Microsoft Monitoring Agent already. That's it on my desktop, MMA setup. I've extracted it using, it's in the notes here, MMA setup /C to extract it. Those people watching on the video, there we go, that's what I did to extract it. And then I just have to run the installer. Now the installer command is here, But if you look in the documentation, it's got it in the documentation as well. So let's go back and copy the workspace key and paste that in there. There we go. And I'm just going to copy the whole of that, and I'm going to run it in my administrative command prompt on the machine. Again, I would use my software deployment service to push this out to all my Windows 7 machines. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated to install it for Windows 7. Okay, it's in terms of the executable there, it's got it's set up directly. It's got QN in the. Let's go there. So it's quiet and there's no user interface, and I accept the user license agreement and so on. So that's a brilliant script for pushing out remotely with your deployment software. Okay, so that's my Windows 7 machines now onboarded. Okay, so let's pop back to Defender. Let's have a look at my machines, and let's see if I've got any more machines in the list. Unfortunately, not yet. Okay, so we're waiting for the Intune machines. It will come in. Notice, though, my risk level has gone to low. Okay, so as my machines get onboarded, and if let's do a hard refresh of that page and see if I get any more machines listed just for demo purposes. Okay, no, not yet. Okay, but for any machine that's listed, okay, I can click on a machine, okay, and it'll tell me things like there are 2 active alerts and 1 incident. Okay, this particular machine, it's seen the test alert, suspicious PowerShell command line. That's the one we ran to prove that onboarding works. Okay, and a suspicious sequence of exploration activities. That's probably because I ran query the sense service. You know, I was looking for stuff on the machine. It's like, why is someone looking for the state of the sensor? Is that suspicious or not? Okay? And so that's what's given me the low rating rather than the informational rating. Okay? And so I could take those alerts. In fact, if I go and look at the alerts queue, I should see those 2 alerts. Okay? And when I'm ready, I would take that test alert and mark it as closed, effectively, because it's obviously just an alert to prove that it's working. But those 2 alerts have both happened within a small period of time on a single machine. And so if I was to look at the incident portal, okay, then I would see that it's found an incident for me on that machine. There are 2 active alerts of 2 on one machine. But it could be, you know, the same thing happened on many machines. That would constitute many alerts, but would constitute a single incident. Okay? So incidents are roll-ups of alerts. Okay? But we can see how easy it is for that stuff to come in. It can take about an hour for some machines to onboard. Okay? But once they onboard, their ability to report to the service is very quick. Okay? So if still haven't got any machines in there yet, but that's okay. Let me talk about some other things to finish off. Okay? If I wanted to onboard a server, it's the same Microsoft monitoring agent, okay? But I fill in the workspace key and ID of Azure Security Center, and I route it through Azure Security Center, because that's how I buy the license for it. Okay? So if I was doing servers, then I would go to Azure Security Center. I don't have a subscription in this tenant, so there's no data there. But if I went in here, I'd be able to click on a subscription. Inside the subscription, I would tick the box saying, connect this subscription to Microsoft Defender ATP. Okay? So that's relatively easy to onboard your servers as well. Okay? If you do Azure Security Center first, okay, Azure Security Center will build a Microsoft Defender ATP subscription for you if you ran that first. So remember, right back at the start of the demo, it said, did I want US, Europe, or I think it was Asia, wasn't it? It gave me 3 locations for my data. If I do it from this portal first, it will create me an MDATP subscription in Europe. I don't get a choice. Okay, that's the way that Azure Security Center works. So if you wanted it in Asia or America, then you'd want to make sure you onboarded your first machine and you choose Americas or Asia. Okay. Let's pop back to Intune. Okay, and let's have a quick look at some of the things we can do once we've onboarded machines. For example, okay, that one. Okay, so I can go into Intune, and at the moment I have no configuration profiles. I could create a configuration profile. Let's call it MDATP risk level. it's going to be a Windows 10 and later configuration policy. And under the configuration, I have, and I'll just zoom in on that, okay, I have a Microsoft Defender ATP object. So normally you might be familiar with Intune. You might go, okay, I want to configure my machines to have a PIN number, or I want to configure my machines to have, it must have disk encryption. Okay? Well now, as of about the last 6 months indeed, I'm able to say my machines must have an ATP config, and that ATP config must be a certain level and lower. Okay? So for example, I can say, from not configured, I could say clear. Now notice on that, let's zoom in, notice on that I could pick low. So you remember my one onboarded machine at the moment? My one onboarded machine at the moment is set to, has an alert on it and is low. So if I choose clear and click OK, when Intune pushes that setting out to the machine, that machine will become uncompliant because the machine is low and compliance requires me to be less than low. It requires me to be clear. Okay. Follow this example through. Okay. That machine that's now low in Defender, okay, I could have a rule in, say, conditional access that says you can access your company data only if you're on a machine that's compliant. Well, my machine is now not compliant because it's low, and low means not compliant. Therefore, take that example through from a user example. User picks up some malicious software. Microsoft Defender ATP notices it, raises the alert above no alert, so raises it to informational or higher, depending on what the risk is. That makes the machine non-compliant. That means the user tries to log into Outlook, SharePoint, the Office portal, whatever, and it goes, no, you can't get there. Okay. Meanwhile, your security teams are looking into the alert, fixing the machine. Okay. So if we were to go back to my machine list, for example, and click on my machine, I could do things like, and I've not enabled it, so actually I'm not going to see it. Let me go to onboarding briefly as we finish. No, sorry, not onboarding, advanced features. And let's see if this will open up for me. No, it's throwing an error there. There's a setting called live response, and on this portal I've got an error at the moment. If live response was able to load up, I'd have an option like these options further up the screen. And what I can do is I can connect to the machine that's under risk. Okay? I can do things like block all access outbound from the machine, so I could stop the malicious activity that the machine is doing. Block all access outbound from the machine, but only allow the Defender portal to connect into the machine. So I can connect to the machine while it can't do anything else. Okay? Or I could say, let the user carry on using Outlook and Teams, but stop everything else. So the machine's been infected, the user is still doing productivity, the user's still working, but the malicious actions on the machine, they're blocked. And then you could connect in from the Defender portal via the website, so it's coming in from the cloud to the machine. And then you can run scripts and the like on the machine. Okay. So I can't turn that on because there's an error in that page. Let me quickly hit refresh and see if I can do that as we come to finish. Okay. So I think it hasn't loaded that. No, it's still throwing an error. But what I would get if I was able to do that is I would see my machine. Oh, look, there's my Windows 7 machine onboarded. I would see my machine. I could click on my machine. And then up the top, in this bar at the top, I would be able to choose isolate machine and then connect to the machine. Okay. So there we go. 20 minutes from having Windows Defender ATP licenses already bought. That's probably the long bit. Okay, through to having a couple of machines onboarded, through to going Intune, click, 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 done. Thank you very much.